Well, here we are in Ephesians 1 again, going through verse by verse, verse 6 today. It's the middle of this massive long sentence where he's just bursting full of praise. He's not bothered about the grammar and sentence structure. He wouldn't have come top in his class if this was a grammatical exercise. But he's described so many incredible things for the Christians in Ephesus, telling them what they are, the blessings that they have in Jesus. We've seen them over the past few days, that they've been chosen, handpicked by God. They've been adopted. And this was all predestined. This was all planned before the creation of the world. It's all for God's pleasure and will. And he goes on and he says here in verse 6, this is all to the praise of his glorious grace, which he has freely given us in the one he loves. I remember my mum doing a Bible study with some women, and they were going through the book of Ephesians, and a lady had just moved to the church and she joined the group, and the rest of the group were quite mesmerised the way she tackled it, because she just pulled it apart from a literary point of view and was talking about how bad the sentence structure was and so on. And that was sadly because she'd come from a church that was very liberal. That's what they did with the Bible. They just criticised it as a piece of literature and how better it could be written and so on. And yet it was because she wasn't saved. It was because her eyes weren't open to the truths of these wonderful verses. And yet when they were, when she did become a Christian, she wasn't bothered, of course, about how long the sentences were and so on. She was just delighting in the truths of what are written there. And the truths here are, we have been chosen, predestined, adopted by God to the praise of his glorious grace, which he's freely given us. Now, of course, grace, getting what we don't deserve, God's good gifts, are free for us, but certainly not for God. Grace, the old acrostic, GRACE, is helpful to remind ourselves always. God's riches, for us, okay? God's riches, but, ACE, at Christ's expense. So free for us, but it cost Jesus everything. It cost God the Father giving his Son to die. But no wonder Paul wants us to be filled with praise when we reflect on all these wonderful things that are ours freely.